Hi, all of you. Well, I'm making this video because I just remember something from back in 1982. Now, like specifically 1982, and I think probably 1981, but I think it was more like 82. I remember that we used to do these. I mean, my neighbors. And then for Jet Night, if you're watching this, so I remember that Noe and Jesse built one of these. It was not like this one, of course, but it was just like this, where the steering wheel was like, well, this was our steering right here. I mean, it was like we would steer with our foot right here, one here and one there, and then we would steer. That was our steering wheel right there, and we built a seat. And I know that my neighbor built a very fancy one where he built a roof, like a roof over it. So that was our seat right there. And then we used to have to like either we had to have somebody push us, or we were able to use a bicycle and pull it by with a string. We used to do one of those two things. But I tell you, I mean, back in those days, I remember when we used to do those. I mean, like it was fun riding on those things because of course, like back in the days, we used to ride on those. But like these go karts in this illustration here, they used they have wheels. They have the wheels that it should be. But at the time we only had skateboard wheels. Like we got the wheels from the skateboard. That's what we were using at the time, and then we would bolt them underneath the plank, and then the back too. We used to use skateboard wheels because that's all we had. I mean, it was all that we had at the time. So yeah, but I remember those days that we had. That's what we used for our wheels, but it worked. I mean, it worked good. I mean, and I remember in my days, like my neighbors would do a lot of stunts with those things. Like they would be riding with the bike really fast, and then you would do like a little bit, like a big slide out, like a 180. They used to do 180s at high speed and stuff, and that was a lot of fun for them. Apparently, I remember those days. And then of course, like we were we would how I call it, like take turns. I mean, I remember specifically. I think it was like three go karts that we had, but of course we had a lot of them. Friends that built go karts too back in the day, but like for our immediate neighbors, we had three go karts. If I remember specifically, I know that we joined a team. Two of us. It was two people per go kart. Like they would build their own. Like each of those six, like it was like around six of us or so, or six friends that where they split up to two each, and they would each build their own. Each two would build their own, and we would have one go kart for two people, and then of course one person would be the driver and the other one would be the engine. Like we would push, either we would push the go karts, or we would attach a string to the bike, and we would pull it with the bicycle. We would be the engine and pull it with the bicycle. And but I mean, it was better to use a bicycle because it was faster. We would be able to go faster if we would pull with the bicycle. So it was always preferable to do with the bike. But if we didn't have a bicycle, then we would just push it. I mean, and then of course we would always take turns being the engine, because who wanted to be the engine, like, so yeah. Anyways, well, I distinctively remember the steering, how we used to steer those things. Yeah, we would put our foot on the plank that's on the front, and we would use our feet to steer the go kart, yeah. But I mean, it's funny that we used skateboard wheels like these skateboard wheels. We used skateboard wheels for our wheels, and apparently they were pretty reliable. Apparently, it seemed pretty reliable in those times. And I remember we used to also play a game with the go karts, like three of us. I mean, like we had three go karts or something like that, and then we would wait for like we would go at the end of the street, and then we would wait for a car to pass by, and then we would race. we would race and try to get to our house before the car did. You know, I remember we used to do things like that. Yeah, we used to race to get to the house before the car did. So yeah, I remember that. You know, and then of course. Yeah, I remember like some of those times. Well, I remember that like my neighbor would always want me to be the engine and stuff, and so yeah. Well, and I didn't really agree to doing that all the time, but whatever. I mean, but I remember one specific time with my friend, with my neighbors Noe and Jesse. Like there was this guy that we knew. His name was Gilbert. He was kind of like he was a challenged person because he was born defective or something. And then I remember this guy, that guy Gilbert, that was his name. And then I remember one time that we were pushing the go-karts with our bicycles, and then somehow this Gilbert guy ended up like lost control of the go-kart, and he ended up underneath a car, like underneath like a parked car, a parked car. And then they had the laugh of their life with that. I remember that. And then I remember I saw it right there. And we had our funny moments. Like I remember like we did lose control on those things sometimes, and sometimes we would crash into each other and stuff. But and then I remember one day that one day we saw our go-kart broken into pieces, one of them, and then my dad told us that a car ran it over, but I don't think we didn't believe in that story because we felt like my dad is the one that destroyed it because my dad just hated them. I don't know. I mean, but anyway, they should remember those go-karts, like we typically used to take turns, and we had to take turns being the engine, and of course nobody wanted to be the engine, and of course, but it was only fair that we took turns to be the engine. And then sometimes we used to actually use those to go to a friend's house. Like I would be pushing somebody, like I would be pushing one of my neighbors, like because he wanted a ride to his friend's house that was nearby, like around the corner there. And then and I used to be the engine, and stuff, like so yeah. I mean, well, anyway, so that's my little story. I remember these go-karts, Yeah, so we could. Well, I would imagine I probably would imagine wanting to build one of these things. It's very easy to build these things, Anyway, we used to we needed to have a big piece of plywood that's wide enough to accommodate any of us, and then we would need to build a back plate right there for a sheet so I could lean on it, and maybe some little side rails, and then we just need a front plank, just a front plank that we could that with a bolt on the front, and then where it steers, and we use our feet to steer it. That's how we used to steer these things, Yeah, those are the days, man. I tell you. Back in 1982. All right, well, I hope you liked this video. So, yeah.